This ability to understand, this ability to look at others, this ability to respect people for what they do. Azim Premji was asked once, what is the secret of it? Azim Premji's story is fascinating. He goes away to Cornell as a 21-year-old. Just when he is finishing year 1, his father dies. His father is this vegetable oil seller. Wipro is a soap and oil selling company. And his uncle says that you have to come back, otherwise this empire will collapse. And he just leaves everything and comes. And therefore he builds this whole formidable software, IT, hardware empire from scratch. And when asked, what is your secret of success, he says, without batting an eyelid, immediately he said, I always hired people smarter than myself. The tendency is to hire people who are not smarter than you, because they will listen to you. He said, that's the only thing I did. I just sat in any interview board, I decided he's smarter than me, I took him. And they took me to where I am. Such a simple, clever solution. When his son was asked that Rashad, your father is giving away money left and right. Premji had given away 12,000 crores. This is your money that he is giving away. What do you feel about it? So this 25-year-old kid, he gets up and he says, ever since I was young, Dad told me that this is not your money. That if I don't give it all away before I die, you have to give it away. So he says, never my money. So why should I feel bad? So this generosity, this understanding that you just got lucky and that you have to give it back, this understanding that there are far brighter people out there than you can imagine. That Manmohan Singh story, that for him everybody else knew more than him. He would listen to each one of us with such rapt attention. The Prime Minister of India, the most famous finance minister we ever had, and he would be sitting there with notes. So you will see that this is what is the growth mindset. A growth mindset is not so much hard ambition. It is not so much this drive and this passion, this unidirectional flow of me first and what is in it for me that Trump stands for. And it is about what is the common good. It is about how I can do well for others. I was just attending this conversation where there's a skill called networking, and that was being discussed. And this one lady, she got up and said that networking is not about going there and finding out people who will be of use to you. Networking is about going and finding out people who you can be of use to. That's when people will respect you. Why will you respect me if I am coming to get things from you? You will always respect me when I stand there and say, okay, this is what I can do for you. So this for all of you who are growing up in a difficult world, in a world that is fraught with uncertainty. What do you expect next? What is going to happen to the world next year? What jobs are you going to do? There was this study done at Eton. Eton is one of the finest schools in the world. And they found that in the last 30 years, their children who graduated had gone to do jobs that did not exist when they were in school. Those jobs just didn't exist. And that's why I go back to what I said right in the beginning, that success and a positive mindset and a growth mindset is about continuous learning and renewal. It is about renewal. I must tell you this story. one of my stories. I graduate as an electronics engineer, and I quickly realized that I can do anything else except electronics engineering. Right? So I go and study rural management, and I join the civil service. Then I go and sit for an interview at the UN. The UNDP, I am getting interviewed. One of the fellows who's interviewing me is the later finance minister of India, Chidambaram. I don't know him then, and 2 or 3 other very well-known people. And they say, okay, you've come for this job. This is a job that requires a understanding of law and a training in economics. So I said, sir, I am an engineer. I have no idea what economics is or law is. So Jairam Ramesh, who's also on the interview, he says, okay, it doesn't matter. You know English, don't you? I said, yeah, English I know. And that's how I got that job, just pure luck. So I sit there. 3 days later, my boss, exactly 3 days later, my boss calls me up at midnight. These were days of those old phones, so nobody would call. Even now it's very disrespectful to call anybody at midnight. But he called me at midnight and he said, tomorrow morning I have a session where I am going to teach monetary policy to the board of the Punjab National Bank. Very famous economist. I said, yeah, very good, sir. Why are you telling me this? He said, no, but I have been called by the finance minister, so I can't go there. You take that class. I said, what? I all of 24, 25, no idea of law, economics, and as I confessed, no idea of engineering also. So, but I can't do this. He said, no, you come home. So at midnight I go to his house. This is Delhi, winters, the poor South Indian on a motorcycle, it's like really cold. I go and he has these 4 books kept there. He says, I know that you don't know anything, but I've kept these books and I've marked out the 7 chapters. So you read that and you can give the lecture. I said, sir, when is the lecture? 9 o'clock. What? But he didn't even bat an eye. He didn't even consider the discussion. He just said, you go and I had to do that. From midnight till 6:30 in the morning, I had to read all of that. And I'm new to Delhi, so I have to leave early also because I don't know the way to North Delhi. I'm going on a motorcycle without Google Maps and whatever. So I went. That's so this thing that there is very little that you can say no to. You have to accept those challenges. What's the risk? The risk is you will be a horrible failure. But he said, I am taking that risk. They are going to call me and say, I know that you can do it. So it's very often you will find that you are thrown into these very difficult circumstances, and it is your ability to handle those, because handling easy things, handling things that you are ready for, handling things that you are trained for, what's the big deal? Somebody asks you to do a isometric drawing, that, so you do it. That's not a big deal. It's doing these strange things. There's a big thrill, there's a very big chance of failure and embarrassment. But you have to take it up. And these things, they work. Most of the time they work. There are several times. Obviously, all those times that I flopped, I don't remember. Therefore, I'm not telling you those stories. But I remember the time that I succeeded and it did well. That is what is that positive mindset thing. That it is important for you. My other boss, Korean, I told a couple of you this Korean story. Kurian, heard of him? Varghese Kurian, the milkman of India. I think I have him somewhere. Yeah, that's Kurian. I studied there at his college called the Institute of Rural Management. He was my first boss. Kurian went away on a government of British India scholarship to study in Minnesota, nuclear physics, 1943. When he got his PhD, he came back because the bond was that he should come back. He came back. There was no British government. Right? So he said, I am back. They said, what do we do with you? The new government. He said, I don't know. So the education ministry said, okay, there is one position. You are a doctorate in nuclear physics. We have one position which is that in this God-forsaken village in Gujarat, there is a dairy which is not working properly. You go and handle it. Really? I don't know a cow from a buffalo. But he went away there and he became the world's biggest authority on milk. Changed India from being one of the most deficient milk producers to the world's biggest milk producer. That was Kurian's thing. Yeah, and yes, there is a problem. I am there. I will handle it. For those of you who haven't seen it, you should see the movie that he made. He made one movie with Shyam Benegal, Girish Karnad, Shabana Azmi called Manthan. It's a movie of what it means to have positivity and growth in your minds, and how one can convert rural animal husbandry in India into the most corporate and the biggest profit-making FMCG enterprise we have in the country, which is Amul. These are all the fellows I worked with. Here is a quiz. The difficult question, who is the fellow in the turban? Okay, the easy question. Who's the next chap? The person in the center is the economist who gave us India's modern taxation, the first committee on tax reform. And guessing to still around. No, Narasimhan. These are all new fellows. This is the 1980s and the 90s. The first committee on tax reform. Raja Chelaya. And you will hear of him. You will read the Chelaya committee. He was one of my first bosses at the UN. Somebody who understood India pre-liberalization and India post-liberalization. Gave the foundations of how a modern tax system should work. And who's the... Yeah. Who said? Yeah. So Vivek is, my colleague for several years. Most of the work that I did early on and wrote was with Vivek. All three are no more. These are easy. Where's that bridge? Yeah. That's where I taught. That was my first college in the UK. And then I worked for this encyclopedia. I was Encyclopedias Britannica's editor in India. And my favorite Britannica story. Firstly, it was absolutely brilliant working there, because we were working at one time with 100 Nobel Prize winners. 100 Nobel Prize winners would write for us. So I worked with all of them together. But my favorite Britannica story is how it started. 1760, this bunch of investors decide that this encyclopedia is an interesting thing to do, where things are arranged alphabetically. It wasn't there. How do you search? So they said, let us do that. And they went looking for who will write it. They found this really intellectual fellow in Edinburgh in Scotland and went and gave him the contract saying A to Z, you have to write these entries from across the world. Here is your advance. Time 2 years. They went after year 1, they said we'll review after year 1. So when they went after year 1, like a good Scotsman, he was pitch drunk. And what happened? He woke him up then. He said, yeah, I'm doing well. What are you doing? What have you done in this 1 year? He had finished writing A. he had finished writing 1 volume of A. It was a 3-volume set when it was first envisaged. And he had written 1 whole volume on A. They said, what is this? We've done all this sales pitch, these markets are ready, we've spent so much money, you only have 1 year. He said, don't worry, come back next year. Next year they came back, volume 2 and 3 were B to Z. That is how it began. But then it became, and here is where I learned the importance of being meticulous. At Britannica, no word would get printed unless it was checked 17 times. In the 280 history of Britannica, the challenge was that we will give anybody $10,000 if you can find 1 mistake. We never gave it. No, not once. And these are days before computers and whatever. Okay, who's this chap? Ratan Tata. And that fellow at the... Oh, not a bad answer, but no more, he's no more. So see, why I have kept Ratan Tata and him together? Any guesses? Industry. Bajaj, Rahul Bajaj, right? Again, good fortune of working for both of them. Same, brilliant, simple, outspoken people who really cared for everybody. This one? No, this. The second tax reformer in India. After Raja Chilaya, the second person who gave us for example, the GST. Kelkar. That's Vijay Kelkar. My boss for several years, continues to be one. Again, one of the finest people that you could ever meet. Easily one of the most brilliant economists that the world has seen. These 3, I told you about all of them. Yeah. So I worked mostly with Melinda. And my exit from the Gates Foundation was in some sense driven by the divorce. So I was working closely with Melinda. Okay, so I take you back and tell you that what I am looking for, what I am asking you to do is to just focus on this. That growth stories are about bold experiments. Experiments with yourself, with your life, with your learning, with your college, with your peers. All these successful people I talked about are people who basically experiment. Experimentation is a word for entrepreneurship, because when you experiment, you are taking a big risk. Most of us play safe, but growth is about experimentation. Growth is the ability to make mistakes, is the ability to jump in. कूद पड़ा आतिशे नमरूद में इश्क. Remember that? What did Ibrahim alayhi salam do? Just jump into that. If you have that passion, you will jump. and then that becomes a garden. Akhleh muntazire labe bam abhi. So experimentation. And then about innovation. That's how I link that to the Schumpeterian argument of growth. That innovation comes with replacement, with questioning legacy, with dissent, with the ability to say, yeah, you're good, but there is something better. Khanat na kar alame rango boo par. You cannot be content. You have to constantly innovate. Just as in industry, just as in business, so also with yourself. And that comes only when you are continuously reading. Continuously reading. So, and it's fun. And that's the question that the NEP asks, the new education policy asks this fundamental question: what is the goal of education? Why do you go to school? Why should anybody go to school? Why should school be mandatory? Michael Sandel asked this question, that why should people go to school? If you take a look at the most successful fellows, they've all never been to school. Right? All these fellows who drop off at class 10 and class 11 and start playing IPL, they are the most successful, isn't it? Or as this news story came, when Asrani was an actor who died recently. So Raj Kapoor got very upset with Asrani because Asrani was a faculty member at the National Institute of Film, that NIFT in Pune, and Raj Kapoor wanted Rishi Kapoor to get admission there. Raj Kapoor, the doyen of cinema, Rishi Kapoor, who becomes one of the biggest names ever, and Asrani refuses him admission. You know why? He doesn't have a 10th class certificate. So, if you look at the world today, does education have anything to do with jobs, with success? Then what is the purpose of education if it is not getting a job? What does education do to you? Why do we mandate education? That Finland story. Finland in the 19th century was among the poorest countries in the world. Snow for 8 months, no resources, hunting season for 2 months, and got forsaken completely. And on top of that, they have a drought for 4 years, 1858 to 1862. And in 1862, when there is a drought, people are dying of hunger, then the parliament sits and decides, what should we do now? How do we solve this problem? And what is the law that Finland passes? You would expect Finland to pass a law saying, food for everybody, ration shops, compulsory whatever. The law that Finland passes is compulsory education for everyone, for a drought. And it was such a mandated law that actually in Finnish jurisprudence, if you did not go to school, if you did not graduate from the university, you could not get married. That was what Finland did. Mandatory education. 3 years later, Sweden does that. Very poor country. First step they take is education. That's why my original question, that growth does not come without development. It is always development first. You have to prepare yourself first if you want to grow. Growth won't happen by itself. That's why, all these trainings and sessions and school and discipline and all of that. That's where you develop. Then growth will happen. You can get lucky and get born in the Ambani household, but that's 1 in 1.5 billion. So the education policy's point is that the essential thing about education, what does education do? What education does is the most baffling thing. Education doesn't get you a job. There are no jobs. The highest level of urban educated unemployment in India. It has never been as bad. 24% of you who are university graduates are unemployed. 42% in Haryana. One sure way of ensuring you won't get a job is to get educated, to get a degree. So it doesn't get you a job. It is expensive. Then why should you get educated? And it is self-defeating. You know, the problem with education is that education is endless. If you get educated, you will never stop educating yourself. That's what continuous learning is. Education is essentially curiosity. What next? What else can I learn? That मकतबे इश्क के अंदाज निराले देखे, उसको छुट्टी न मिली जिसने सबक याद किया. Right? That's what education is. That is what a growth mindset is. Thank you.